And I don't like his release, so stop talking about it.
I didn't say it once, but since you brought it up, I'm going to average heaps more than him. Yeah, at that price? Who? At that price, who? At that price.
No.
At that price. At that price.
No one.
No one. Good. Matty for the win.
Too late.
Oh!
Too high. Too high.
They keep on asking me if Tom McCone is going to be the ruckman. It's not.
Not yet. Not yet anyway.
Not even. He's not the best ruckman in
I
cup.
want to see kidneys and chesters. I want to see these.
You're not going to be seeing much of chest, aren't you?
Oh, Francis. I just got concussed.
Francis.
I just got concussed.
Doesn't care.
Tom Mitchell doesn't just tug on the ball. Thomas kicks the winning goal and he got 140. Vice captain right now.
Welcome back to SuperCoach Marshals, guys. I am so excited to get stuck into this really shit forward line. If you got problems with this one, I completely agree with you. It has been such a hard line to try and get the first 14 highest average players. We're going to need some DPPs because this list is not really great. If you are new here, please like and subscribe. We are going to be getting some player highlights as well as we're talking about them. So exciting stuff, guys. Let's get straight into it. Please like, leave a comment, and do subscribe. Number 14. Zac the hamstring Fisher boy. So Zachy now in his new role at North Melbourne, 26 years old. He averaged 27 disposals at Carlton for the last 4 games of 2023, which was really promising. Really good to see him get a bit of form before he gets traded into North Melbourne. And I think we've seen enough of I've seen enough of the pre-season kind of training simulations at North Melbourne that Sheasel is now playing in the midfield and a bit of the forward line. A little bit of time down back. But Zac Fisher has been the deepest defender and doing a lot of rebounding in the defence. So I'm kind of glad he got injured. It's going to turn a couple of coaches off. I'm not thinking everyone. A couple of the coaches will be like, no, can't see him, can't, done his hamstring. I really still like him. I think he's going to be fit for round 1. He does have that friendly bye. I really want to save money in the forward line. I think he can really increase his average. The Sheasel-Zeeble role is there for him. He will be getting some kickouts, I think. I don't think, Aaron Hall gone, Zeeble gone, Sheasel playing elsewhere. There's only really Luke McDonald down there. I think even if he gets half that, he can still score pretty well. He's already shown that he can accumulate, a lot of football in the defence at North Melbourne. I think that's a very, very good opportunity for someone who can get 27 touches per game to get up to 30 and a couple of kickouts. And I think he's going to be playing very accountable footy, but I think it's going to be very good for our SuperCoach team. The role is there for him if he's good enough to keep it. And I think in North Melbourne, I think he might. So number 14, he's sneaking in to my top average in the forward line. I think he is a very important player to be having in your team if he has that role, which has been showing that he can have that role. So I do like Zac Fisher at 14. We're going to get slightly better here at 13, but not too much. Jeremy Cameron. So Jeremy Cameron is turning 31 this year and he's a key forward. Now I've got a bit of a rule when picking my forward line. It's never pick a key forward. I haven't picked a key forward since Pavlich and Rewalt back in the day. They were good picks. A lot of the key forwards these days, not so much. So he's only averaged over, so Jeremy Cameron, everybody thinks, good SuperCoach pick, always over 500k. He's only averaged over 90 2 times in 12 years, and he's never averaged more than 93 points. So never averaged more than 93 points. So I know maybe my kind of perception of him is a bit skewed, but look, he's never averaged more than 93, and when he has, he's only, and when he has averaged over 90, it's only been twice. So it's not really looking good as a pick at all, especially being 31 this year. I don't think he's going to be getting his highest average ever now. I'm expecting maybe a 77 to 86 average, and that's how bad we're doing in the forward line for him to be a 13. He has not played a full year since the shortened COVID year as well, guys. So again, possibly top 13, not a very good pick, Jeremy Cameron. He has potential to get those really big bags of goals, gets really big scores, but it's just not sustainable. All these key forwards are just not a really good pick in my opinion. Cats that do have a nice buy, if you want to kind of look at something in the positive. He is only missing 1 game for the year, not through injury, and that's at the, I think, second last bye of the year, around 13 or 14. So, look, he's 460k or something like that. I don't think he's a very good pick, but probably average more than Fisher. So let's get into someone else who I've seen in a couple of teams. It's really surprised me seeing so many of this guy in a couple of SuperCoach teams, but there is no one in there. So Toby Greene at 12. So Toby Greene is also turning 31 this year. Not a key forward, so I like him a little bit better than Jeremy Cameron. There's really no indication that he's going to get more midfield time at all. If anything, I really think his midfield time will reduce. So he had about 17% CBAs last year, which is actually a lot higher than his last 3 years. He's been kind of getting 4 or 5, maybe 6, 7%, and last year was 17%. I don't think that's going to really keep up. I think, if anything, being a year older, 31, he's going to be less around in the midfield and more in the forward line. Could be wrong, but I don't think it increases from 17%, that's for sure. He hasn't played a full season since 2015. So another big reason why a lot of Toby Greenes in a lot of teams need to go. And this is the year before last, 2022, he did average 76.4. And if you put it in perspective, if you get a 76.4 from someone you're paying over 400k for, you're not going to be really happy. So he's done it 1 year, he can do it again. He's 31. If you want to kind of look at on the positive side, he does have a good buy. No, he doesn't even. He's got 2 buys. So don't scrap that. Don't get Toby Greene either. So I'm glad we could rule out those guys. Now, this guy, the next one, is actually a bit more kind of promising. I want to give you someone else who's turning 31, Taylor Adams. Now, the reason why Taylor Adams is a good pick, or let me rephrase that, a better pick than some others, is that his injury history is concerning. It is. But he did manage 22 games last year, which he's only done one other time in 11 years. So it is encouraging to see him play 22 games last year. I don't think he's going to get to that this year. Maybe, hopefully, if you get him a similar amount for you. He's in the 11 years he's played football, he's only really played more than 18 games twice, ever. So, again, with the amount of buys, and he does have 2 buys as well in the year, you are going to be missing Taylor Adams for a little bit. However, he had one of his lowest CBAs ever. So he had 38% CBAs last year. Okay, so he's not a forward, so he's not going to score really well in the forward line. So his average is really low. His price is really low because of all this. He averaged 78.2. So he's been training in the Sydney Swans midfield with James Jordan and Grundy and all these guys, and he's been looking $1 million. Obviously, Grundy's his good mate. He's going to be in the midfield with him. They'll be looking for each other. There's a little bit more potential to be scoring a little bit more based on that. He had 65% of CBAs in 2022, so that was a substantial drop. He had a drop of over 30-ish% of CBAs from the previous year, and he was Collingwood's second highest CBA midfielder in that year, in 2022. So I think with Mills out, he's going to be getting a lot more CBAs than he got at Collingwood, and Grundy as their main ruck, it's not going to hurt his scoring. If it wasn't for his injury history, he would be a great buy, but you do have to consider that with his kind of price and all that. So it's one to consider, Taylor Adams. Don't mind it, but as I said, injury-prone players are going to be really hard to pick. Now, number 10, we have Charlie Curnow, another tall forward. Now, Curnow obviously has a lot more potential than, I think he's probably got the highest potential of all the key forwards on this list. He's actually the 3rd most expensive forward line play. He averaged 97.5, which is incredibly huge. If I knew that he was going to do 97.5, it would be a great pick. I don't think he will, and even if he does, Carlton does have 2 buys. It's going to be really hard to start with him, especially if you pick him up in round 1 of SuperCoach, and he's already missing, I think, round 2. So, or round 2 or round 3. So it's going to be really hard to pick him up. I am going to stay away from key forwards. You do what you want, but if they don't kick a decent bag, they can have really low kind of floors. And he did average over 87 only once in 7 years, and 97.5 is, you know, a decent outlier to all these other scores. So other than last year, his highest average has been 87. Could that be a sign of things to come? Maybe, but you know, if you think his high score is a 97.5 and he's been a fair way from it, you're paying the absolute premium for your Charlie Curnows. Look, yeah, he's got the talent. So I wouldn't say the 97.5 is a once-off. I think he can do something similar like that again. But for me, you can always get key forwards relatively cheaper than their starting price, because they do have their big 120s, 130s, sometimes 150s when they get big bags, but there are games where they kick 1 or 2 for the game and they get 40s and 50s and 60s, and that's when they really bottom out in price. So as a starting pick, I don't really like him. Can he get another 97? I do think he can, but I don't like key forwards. Okay, and that's all I'll talk about key forwards for this one. Now, number 9, my good mate Dylan Moore. Now, as another rule, I hate small forwards, but SuperCoach has made it really hard this year with only pretty much the talls and the smalls on the forward line that you can pick. You can usually pick so many more midfielders there, but Dylan Moore, small forward in a bottom 4 team. Well, it was in a bottom 4 team. I actually think Hawthorn are going to get a lot better this year, but I think Dylan Moore could do all right. I got him at number 9. He's turning 25 this year. Okay, so not a bad age. So he played 23 games last year, so he's durable. So these are all things that are ticking kind of boxes. He played 22 games in 2022. That's, you know, so he averaged over 90.5 in the last 2 years as a small forward in Hawthorn. I think that's an incredible feat. I think if Hawthorn didn't have so many good midfielders and he got more midfield time, he could be a lot of a better scorer. He only had 3% of CBAs in 2023, and that reduced by about 13% from the previous year. So he had 16% of CBAs in 2022. So I really don't like 3% of CBAs because, you know, it really lowers your floor when you're not getting that midfield time. If Hawthorn's getting smashed and he's in the forward line, you know, he can get some low scores. I don't think he improves that much. I think his ceiling is pretty capped with the amount of CBAs he gets. I think they still need to rotate Josh Ward through there and some other guys of the Hawks. So I don't think Dylan Moore's going to be getting a lot more midfield time. So it makes him a really awkward pick. But he has averaged over 90 in his last 2 years. So that is a decent sign. Another good sign with Dylan Moore is that he averaged 104 in the last 5 games of the year, which is a little bit more, you know, I like to look at the more recent scoring, and 104 is pretty good. 25 years old, hopefully you can have another breakout kind of year. If he averages 100, it'd be an absolute win for your SuperCoach team. He does have a friendly bye. He only has that 1 bye for your SuperCoach team, and it is with 5 other teams, but better than having the 2 byes. So Dylan Moore, not a bad option. I have him at number 9. Now, this is a real bolter at number 8. So I'd have Mitch Owens at number 8. I really enjoyed watching Mitch Owens. I think he had 1 injury-affected game last year, which lowered his average as well, with 42 SuperCoach points that he scored. He's the 2nd year in the system. He's played 22 games. I don't really see how his average doesn't increase. So he played pretty much his first full year, and he played really well. He's going to be playing again unless injured, which, you know, I don't think he will be, but he's not really an injury-prone player. But if he does get another year, his average can only go up. So I like picking kind of players where there's only upside to them. There's not a player, oh, he can lose some points, he can get some points. People like 2nd, 3rd years, lots of talent. Mitch Owens, I think he's just going to get even more involved and even more SuperCoach points. Another friendly player with a friendly bye, doesn't hurt. He had 16% CBAs, and most of that came into the second half of the season. So he was getting really low CBAs at the first half, and they really started mixing him up in the midfield with the midfield time in the last bit of half of the season, which increased his CBA average. And if that trend continues, he's going to be seeing more midfield time, which is going to equivalent to better scores. So I do think Mitch Owens can be a good pick this year. So I don't really mind Mitch Owens. Now, this guy has been around for a while. Isaac Heeney, in a lot of people's never again list, I do have him 7th for average, just about there in the top 6, turning 28 this year. And just as I put him in my never again list about 3 years ago, the last 2 years, he's only missed 1 game. So he's been so injury prone, and recently he's been shown that he can be quite durable. That being said, as soon as you get him, you'll probably get injured. His average last year was 86.5, was actually his second lowest of the last 7 years. So his last year's average was second lowest of the last 7 years. So only 12% of CBAs, so he looked locked in that forward line. Unless someone's pushed top 4 and have a big increase inside forward, kind of forward 50s and points scored, I don't think he's going to increase his average too much. I think, though, the Swans are going to have a really good year with James Jordan and, Hamling and these Grundy and Adams. These kind of recruits, I think, are going to not hurt the Swans. I think they're going to do a little bit better. So, Heeney, one to consider, not too hard. Obviously has 2 buys, and you probably have a Grundy in your team or some other Sydney player. I don't think there's any other Sydney player you really want, but maybe Goulden. Yeah, so Heeney, number 7. As I said, this has been a shocking forward line, but we've got to get to the top 6. Now, Caleb Daniel is a number 6. Now, you know exactly what to expect with Caleb Daniel. Last 5 years, he's averaged between 90 and 100 SuperCoach. So he's been very consistent between that 90 and 100 range. He'll probably average in between somewhere like that again this year. He does have a friendly buy, only the 1 buy for your Supercoach team. 2020 was the year's position was the most experimental with. This is not what you really want to see when picking a forward line player. He played a bit in the back line, played a bit in the midfield, and then his scoring was really effective when he played a bit on the half forward and even a bit in the wing. He had mid 40% for CBAs over a 4-game stretch where his scoring was amazing. I think you guys maybe remember last year where he was getting 160s, 120s. He was in the midfield a lot in that period. They pushed him out, and then his scoring dropped right down. It is worth noting, though, his last 5 games at Supercoach, when they did push him out of the kind of CBA mix, his average decreased 68 points per game. So even someone who's reliable as a 90 to 100 kind of scorer, he did average 68 points towards the end of the year, which is quite scary, guys. So another one to kind of think about, but not too hard. So personally, I'm just going to be getting I'm trying to fill a lot of holes in here, but I do think these are the guys that will average the most until we get some DPPs, because we need help. We need some serious help here. Now, number 5, I have seen in a lot of teams, and I'm not a fan of, is Luke Jackson. Now, his premium status as a Supercoach player is 100% reliant on the fitness of Sean Darcy. If Sean Darcy is out for a long-term injury or a hamstring or something where it's going to be 4 or 5 or even a season injury, I'll be getting Jackson straight away. If not, I'm not touching him. So in the games where he was rucking and he got 20 or more hitouts, he scored over 90 every single time. Okay, so that floor of a 90 is amazing, but it only does that when he's getting the hitouts. He scored over 100 every single time except once being a 93. So in all those games he was getting over 20 hitouts, every game was over 103 except for one. Amazing stats for Luke Jackson. Increased his average by 13.3 points, mainly due to Darcy being out, but also due to the fact that he's still a young forward and he's going to get better in time as well. I think for him to be, if Darcy's fit for the whole year, which I don't think he will, but if he is fit for the year, he's an absolute bad pick, Luke Jackson. It's going to be hard to predict how much he will average this year, because it really does depend on how injured Sean Darcy gets. If he gets a bad injury, he's going to be probably the number 1 forward. If he doesn't get an injury and Darcy has a pretty consistent year, plays 20, 21 games, he's not. That's pretty much it. He's got a great buy. He's got the 1 buy with Port Adelaide. He's got DPP, he's great cover. But again, he's he's not a horrible scorer, not being the number one ruckman, but he definitely, at his price at 550-ish kind of K, I would want Darcy out before starting him in my team. Okay, so now let's talk about this guy. Let's talk about Dusty, because everyone thinks Dusty is, 23 again, and he's going to be doing great things. I got him at number 4 because there's just literally no one else. But if you do think he's going to average more than last year, it's probably because of 2 reasons. Okay, number 1, you think, I'm hearing all these preseason reports that Dustin Martin is absolutely killing it. He's on fire. He's destroying everyone in the preseason training. Or you think, and you think that his end of season form is the reason why he's going to do it. So if you don't really know the scores off the top of your head, the last 7 scores Dusty's got for last year was 131, 117, 93, 108, 81, 158, and 139. I don't have that average out in front of me, but I'm guessing it's about 120-ish so average, which is really good for Dusty. So if you think he's going to go crazy, these are probably the 2 reasons why. I don't think you should think that he will get more CBAs, because he didn't really get more in those games that he was doing good last year. He only averaged 18% of CBAs, and the most he got in a game was 38%, which is still quite low. So there's still a lot of more midfielders that are above him in the CBAs at Richmond, which is Hopper got more than him, Taranto got more than him, Prestia got more than him, Bolton did, and even Thompson Dow got more CBAs on average than him. Even Cochin, when he played, got more CBAs than Dusty. So I don't think, unless, the new coach wants to put him more in the midfield, that he's going to get more for any particular reason. I still think he can score well, not getting CBAs as you showed last year, but it does affect his floor. When you're not getting any midfield time in the CBAs, it can give you some pretty shocking games. He did score under 69 4 times, and for someone who's over 500k, scoring 4 times under 69 can lose you a lot of money and let other players pick you up for quite cheap. So that's Dusty at number 4. I think that's a pretty comprehensive summary. Some stats about him that you might not have known. And number 3, which could surprise everyone, is Macrae. I got him number 3 only. I think there's been a big decline in Macrae in the last 3 years. So last 3 years, he's averaged 128, then he dropped it to 115.2, then he dropped it again to 99.8. So if that trend continues, is he going to drop another 9 or so points? I think maybe. I think he is turning 30 this year. His last 3 games, which is quite concerning, of 2023, was 87, 57, and 49. He was subbed out one of those games as well, but he wasn't injured. He just was subbed out, I guess, because he's one of the older guys who needed rest. And these are the things that you kind of have to take into consideration when you're picking a player like Macrae. He's an option for a subvest now. He's an older player. They want to rest him up, and if they got a game sewn up, they could rest him. But he was vested against, I think, the Eagles, where they lost. So he was just out of form. He's just been playing horribly and he's out of form. So he did score some really good scores last year. So the first 12 rounds of last year, he scored 40 to 45% of CBAs. So he was getting those 40 to 45% of CBAs. And he didn't get lower than 81 points in SuperCoach. And that's great. That's when everyone thought, yep, good pick. Handy, he's in the forward line. It's all going good. The last 11 games of the year, he got around 25% of the CBAs only. So if we took that in 2 halves, so the first half of the year, 40 to 45% CBAs, he scored over 99 times. The second half of the year, he scored over 94 times with only 25% CBA. So these are the stats and the trends in the Bulldogs that it's a little bit concerning. Bailey Smith's injury may affect that, but it does look kind of bad, like the direction it was heading. Less CBAs, less scoring, only 4 times over 90 in the last half of the year. He does have a friendly bye. It's one positive thing. He should be in the top 6 kind of forward line players. So that's the only reason If there were better options, we wouldn't be talking about Macrae, but we are, and I think he's a lot of people's F1 for a lot of the reasons, but I'm looking at the stats in front of me, and unless Bailey Smith's injury changes something, the way it was trending was not in a direction that I would want to pick Macrae in my team. Now these last two, well, this number 2, Shai Bolton. Now, this is probably my prediction that's the least based on science and stats. It's based on feel and based on talent. He's 25 years old. Before 2023, he averaged mid-80s for the last 3 years, and he took his last big step last year, increasing his average by 9.4 points, okay? He averages around 50% of the CBAs for the year over the last 4 years. So it's always been around the 50% CBA mark for Bolton. He's never been a full-time midfielder, and he hasn't really been a full-time forward. So an increase in CBAs will be a sign to point to a further breakout, but there's really no indication of that. There's a lot to kind of work out with how Richmond's going to give out their midfield time. We need to kind of watch that role to see what he gets with the new coach, but I don't see why he can't average 90 and 100 again. At an age around 25, with the talent that Bolton's got, he's a really dangerous, damaging player that they should want to get the ball in the hands of. Him and Dusty, I think, unlike Dusty, I think he's just because he's younger, he's got a little bit more in the tank. He's going to be playing more games. I think he's got more upside. I think he could average a really well score. His bye is horrible though. So straight up of the bat, he's got a horrible bye. He's got missing 2 games for your SuperCoach team. And look, it's going to be really hard to pick them. But I do have Bolton ahead of Macrae. I think Macrae's decreasing, Bolton's increasing. However, the buys, Macrae's a really friendly buy, and Bolton has a not so friendly buy, might persuade you to pick Macrae over Bolton, which I'm completely fine with. If I had to pick one of these 2 players, I'll probably pick Macrae, even though I think that Bolton could average more than him, or more likely to average more than Macrae. Obviously, until we see something from pre-season training that's going to change our minds about either of them. And I think that leads us to the number 1 pick. I think is the number 1 pick in the forward line that we have. Sam Flanders. Being from Gold Coast, there's not a lot of highlights for you here to watch, but we do have some of his Resi's kind of highlights. He did after round 14, so he scored absolute premium midfield numbers after round 14. He came back after I started with Flanders, and he scored horribly, missed half the year, then came back. He got 100, 119, 96, 125. 113, 85, 91, 81, 130, 121. For those kind of numbers, I'd pay $600,000 for in the forward line. He's less than 500K. Now, for those concerned that Took Miller's back to full fitness, how's their midfield time going to gel? Well, he was averaging around 40% of the CBAs, and Took Miller was in the team the whole time that Flanders was scoring these kind of numbers towards the second half of the year. So that's not really a concern. He's only 22 years old. He's got plenty of upside. His potential to go really big. He's at a really decent price. But, you know, with Hardwick being there, we don't know how he's going to be used. We don't know what kind of role he's going to have in the midfield. They're going to play him in the half-forward flank or a winger. How much midfield time is he going to get? We need to have a look at these things. But because he has such a horrible bye, we can watch him round 1, and if we still like him, we can pick him up. If his role's not there, we don't have to. So in that way, it's good, but it's bad that he will have his bye in round 5 or so. And he will have his bye again when there are more teams on the bye. I think it's round 13 or 14. So I do think Flanders is probably the pick of the bunch on average. I think that is such a big sample size of scoring, where it's, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 games in a row. We got the sample size of Flanders towards the end of the year, and it looked really good. He didn't score lower than 81 at all, and the rest were pretty big scores. So I do like Flanders. I think he's the highest averaging forward line player that doesn't get the DPP. You know, if Petrarca or someone else comes, yeah, they'll get it. But I think Flanders will be the highest averaging player, pending the role he gets. I think he just has so much more upside than every other player here. And good luck picking your forward line. Now, that all being said, I am doing everything I can to make sure I spend the absolute minimal amount of money in the forward line. If you're looking through this list, it is quite horrible. And rightfully so. It makes the game a little bit harder this year in SuperCoach, especially with all these horrible buys. It can't be just, yep, pick Flanders, there you go. He has to have the worst buy as well. Can't be about Macrae because he's declining every year for the last 3 years. But that's what makes SuperCoach so good. We hopefully can get some good DPPs and a Chuck Walsh in the half forward flank. But get your Harley Reeds, get your Harmses and all that. Fill the holes until we know what's going on and then we get more data. I hope you really like this video, guys. I hope you like the highlights again. Appreciate everyone that's tuned in. Please do subscribe. If you like what you see and you want to support the podcast, feel free to shout us a coffee. The link's in the description, guys. And yeah, good luck making your team. And I'll catch you on the next video. See ya.